The idea of a government declaring war on a small bird sounds like satire, but in 1958, under Mao Zedong, that's exactly what China did. They launched a nationwide campaign to exterminate sparrows, and it ended in one of the deadliest disasters in human history. It was not symbolic, it was literal, organized, and taken very seriously. And what followed was not just strange, but catastrophic. To understand how this happened, you have to step into the mindset of the time. China was in the middle of the Great Leap Forward, a campaign designed to rapidly transform the country from an agrarian society into an industrial powerhouse. Agricultural output was crucial. Grain production was treated almost like a measure of national survival. Anything seen as reducing yields became an enemy. That is where the Four Pests Campaign comes in. The government identified 4 targets: rats, flies, mosquitoes, and sparrows. The first 3 made a kind of sense. Rats spread disease, mosquitoes carry malaria, flies contaminate food. But sparrows? That decision stands out immediately, even decades later. The reasoning was simple and dangerously simplistic. Officials believed that sparrows were eating too much grain. If each bird consumed a portion of the harvest, then eliminating them would save food. Multiply that logic across hundreds of millions of birds, and it seemed like a straightforward solution. Kill the birds, save the crops, feed the people. What was ignored or dismissed was basic ecology. Sparrows do eat grains, but they also eat insects. In fact, a large part of their diet, especially when feeding their young, consists of insects that are harmful to crops. By removing sparrows, you're not just removing grain consumers, you're removing a natural pest control system. At the time, however, this nuance did not carry much weight. The campaign moved forward with full force. What followed was one of the strangest mass mobilizations in modern history. Citizens across China were encouraged, even required, to participate. Children, workers, entire communities joined in. People climbed trees to destroy nests. They smashed eggs. They killed chicks. But the most bizarre tactic was the coordinated harassment of adult birds. Sparrows cannot stay in flight forever. They need to land and rest. So people used noise as a weapon. They banged pots and pans, beat drums, shouted, waved flags, anything to keep the birds from landing. Flocks of sparrows, exhausted from hours of forced flight, would eventually fall out of the sky and die from fatigue. This was not a small-scale effort, it was nationwide. Reports from the time describe entire cities participating in synchronized noise campaigns. It had the structure of a military operation, except the enemy was a tiny bird. And the numbers are staggering. In 1958 alone, official figures claimed that nearly 2 billion sparrows were killed, alongside 1.9 billion rats and massive quantities of insects. In the following year, over 1 billion additional sparrows were reportedly exterminated. Even if these numbers are somewhat exaggerated, historians agree that the scale was enormous. Entire sparrow populations in many regions were effectively wiped out. At first glance, it may have seemed like a success. Fewer birds meant fewer visible threats to grain, but nature does not operate in straight lines, and removing one piece from an ecosystem rarely produces a simple result. Without sparrows, insect populations exploded. Locusts and other crop-eating insects, previously kept in check by birds, multiplied rapidly. Fields that had been protected by natural predation were suddenly exposed. Swarms of insects spread across farmland, consuming crops at a scale far greater than the sparrows ever had. This was not a minor side effect, it was a full ecological imbalance. At the same time, the country was already under strain from other policies of the Great Leap Forward. Agricultural practices were disrupted. There were issues with over-reporting production, leading to unrealistic state grain quotas. Environmental conditions, including droughts and floods, made things worse. Then the insects came. The combined effect was devastating. Crop yields dropped sharply. In some areas, harvests failed almost completely, and because grain had already been requisitioned based on inflated expectations, local populations were left with little to eat. This is where the story stops being bizarre and becomes deeply tragic. Between 1959 and 1961, China experienced what is now known as the Great Chinese Famine. Estimates vary, but the death toll is widely placed between 15 million and 55 million people. That makes it one of the deadliest famines in human history. It would be misleading to say that the Sparrow campaign alone caused the famine. The situation was complex, involving policy failures, environmental factors, and systemic issues, but the eradication of sparrows clearly made things worse. Recent research suggests that the loss of sparrows may have contributed to nearly 2 million excess deaths by reducing crop yields through increased pest activity. That's a staggering number tied, at least in part, to the decision to eliminate a small bird. So, what makes this story feel so surreal is not just the scale, but the logic behind it. At its core, the campaign reflects a belief that nature could be simplified, controlled, and optimized through sheer will. If something appeared to reduce productivity, it could be removed. The system would improve. The unintended consequences were either not considered or dismissed. But ecosystems are not simple systems, they're networks of relationships. Remove one element and others shift in unpredictable ways. In this case, removing sparrows removed a key predator. Insects surged, crops failed, people starved. There's also something unsettling about the way ordinary people were drawn into the campaign. This was not just a top-down order, it became a mass movement. Participation was framed as patriotic. Children were taught to see sparrows as enemies. Communities competed to kill more pests. Eventually, the mistake became impossible to ignore. By 1960, Chinese authorities reversed course. The campaign against sparrows was halted, and sparrows were removed from the list of pests. In fact, China later imported sparrows from abroad to help restore the population. But by then, the damage had already been done. Fields had been overrun by insects, harvests had failed, millions had died. Looking back, the story of the Four Pests Campaign feels almost like a cautionary tale written after the fact. It has all the elements: a simple solution to a complex problem, a massive coordinated effort, early warnings ignored, and consequences that spiral far beyond the original intent. And at the center of it all is that strange, almost absurd decision, declaring war on sparrows. It's easy to laugh at the idea at first. People banging pots and pans to exhaust birds, entire cities treating sparrows like enemies of the state. But the outcome strips away any sense of humor, because behind the absurdity lies a serious lesson. Small changes in complex systems can have massive effects. Policies based on incomplete understanding can cascade into disasters, and when decisions are enforced at a national scale, the consequences are multiplied. The Four Pests Campaign was meant to increase food production. Instead, it helped contribute to one of the worst famines in human history, and all of it began with the belief that getting rid of a bird would make things better. In the end, the story is not just about sparrows, it's about the limits of control, the danger of oversimplifying nature, and the cost of ignoring how interconnected the world is. If you found this story as mind-blowing as I did, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss future videos. And while you're at it, check out the other videos appearing on the end screen right now. I think you're going to love them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.